Thank you, Representative Clyburn. Appreciate you being here. And thank each of you for being in Kansas City this week. I need to give you some thank yous because I doubt that as elected officials that you, as I used to as a appointed official, got many thank yous for what we do. But I do sincerely appreciate what you do. You've made a commitment to help the people in your states and a commitment to public service, and that's greatly appreciated. I was remiss in the introductions that I provided, the bio that I provided, because both Dave and Mara told you about their families. I too am married. I've been married for 42 years to my college sweetheart, and we have 4 wonderful grown children and 7 fantastic grandchildren. And why that's important to me is because my kids and my grandkids live across the country and they travel across the country. So when they're in your state, their safety, their quality of life, and their welfare is a direct recipient of what you do as an elected official. And I greatly appreciate that. I mentioned in the introductions that I am a resident of Kansas City, Missouri. I've lived here for nearly 40 years. And we appreciate you being here this week because you bring dollars from other places. And I highly encourage you to spend money while you're here. The building where you are, the complex where you are, is a part of the Hall family, which is the Hallmark Foundation. My wife is the most prolific sender of greeting cards that I know, but she is not able to support the Hallmark Foundation by herself. So we need your help. So please spend dollars while you're here. And we're sorry that it rained in our community while you were here last night and maybe dampened your activities, but the forecast is for fantastic weather the next few days. And I see on your agenda that you're visiting the Plaza Art Fair tomorrow evening. And what a fantastic event that is, and I think you will truly enjoy that and being on our Country Club Plaza. So again, also, I'm here on behalf of ASCE and the 140,000 engineering colleagues that I have in ASCE, and we're proud to share with you what we think you will find to be a valuable tool as you encounter legislative issues, as you pursue legislative issues. That is our ASCE report card. Unlike Dave and Mara, who have focused on transportation this morning, I too am going to speak on transportation, but I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about infrastructure in general. So if we could, let's move into that. And the first thing, I want to start with a little brief video, if Hark will boot that up for us.
Infrastructure is the foundation that connects our nation's businesses, communities, and families, driving our economy and improving our quality of life.
Well, infrastructure is what binds our country together. It allows us to move goods and services around the country, allows us to flip a switch and have electricity, turn on a faucet, have water.
You can't run a 21st century economy on a 20th century foundation. You need a modern system.
Quality infrastructure is critical to economic development and economic growth, and it's important that a state has a plan of action, has timetables, has measurable results, puts the funding behind it to take care of their infrastructure.
If a city is not investing in itself, it's probably not going to be able to attract that next generation of people with choices.
The American Society of Civil Engineers 2013 Report Card for America's Infrastructure is a comprehensive assessment of current infrastructure conditions and needs across 16 categories.
It's a snapshot in time that says, how are we doing as a nation in maintaining and modernizing our infrastructure? We have a responsibility to let America know what's happening to this investment they've made.
The grades in 2013 ranged from a high of B- for solid waste to a low of D- for inland waterways and levees, resulting in a cumulative GPA of a D+.
Chicago Transit Authority is over 100 years old. Some of our elevated tracks date from the 1800s.
We have water mains in Washington, D.C. that were put into service before the Civil War, and we still have them functioning, and no wonder they break. But we've got an outdated system.
As far as the ports are concerned, there's certainly need for investment in the infrastructure on both the water side as well as on the land side.
About 42% of American roads are in poor condition, and it costs Americans about $101 billion a year in lost wages, wasted time.
We are behind. Between now and probably 2040 or 2050, we'll effectively be replacing the electric system. We are playing catch-up for a quarter century of not paying a lot of attention.
We've lost that instinct to have the best infrastructure projects, and I think we're going to suffer for it long term.
It's not only a challenge that Illinois faces, I think that's a challenge we face across the country. We are an aging, crumbling infrastructure.
We need leaders to step out and say, at the federal level, the state level, and the local level, we need them to step out and say infrastructure is important.
If our infrastructure doesn't work for us now, what about the future when we have more people?
Where investments have been made, we see the grades improve. From private investment allowing businesses to operate more efficiently, to cities and states creating long-term plans to fix their most vulnerable bridges. We see that where there is action, there are results. We saw 6 categories improve their grades over the last 4 years.
If you look at our rail system, local rail, the major rail lines have been making the investments in their trackage, in their bridges, and their facilities, and it's starting to show. The grades actually went up for rail.
We are making some progress. I think we have to recognize we're not going to reverse the trend overnight.
Every time we've gone back to our citizens and met or exceeded their expectations, they've allowed us to dream one more time.
The most important thing we can do for economic development is infrastructure investment.
It's just not the government that has a stake in infrastructure. It's every business, it's every community.
Thank you for watching that brief video, and Representative Neckritz, thank you for your contributions to our video. So what is this infrastructure report card that we're talking about? Well, it goes back to 1988 when Congress commissioned a group to put together an evaluation of America's infrastructure. And a report was produced called Fragile Foundations, a report card on America's public works. And they only looked at a few infrastructure issues in 1988, and they gave us an overall grade of C. They made specific comments that we're facing increasing congestion, deferred maintenance, and age of the system. And nobody did anything with that for about 10 years. Then in 1998, ASCE picked up the mantle and said, we need to continue to tell the story. So they produced a report card in 98, then again in 2001, and then they rethought the way they did it and said, we need to do one on an every 4-year cycle, and we need to make that report card available when the new president takes office, when the Congress that he's working with takes office. So every year after the inauguration, there will be a new report card produced. We produced one in March of 2013, and a number of us were in Washington, D.C. and went to Capitol Hill and provided our legislators, our federal legislators, with a copy of the report card. And the great thing about the report card is in the past, it's been a written document. And if you are technologically challenged, we have a copy of the executive summary for you. But the great thing is, you can also download that report card on your PC. You can download that report card on your tablet, and if I can get it out of my pocket, you can download it on your iPhone. And in fact, when we were on Capitol Hill, I had it downloaded on my tablet, and we actually sat in a congressman's office, and I was able to flip through there and show him some real-life examples, much of which I'm going to show you a little bit later today, or later this morning. Here are the overall report cards. As the introduction spoke of, we evaluated 16 areas of infrastructure ranging from aviation to wastewater. There were 6 aspects that showed improvement this year. Most of them were minuscule improvements, maybe from a D- to a D. The most significant improvement was in rail. Rail went from a C- to a C+. There have been significant investments in the last 4 years by the rail industry, most of which is private industry. And it has had a significant impact. Right here in Kansas City Southern is headquartered here, and they have made a significant investment in dual tracking their facilities to the deep ports in Texas and Mexico for freight distribution. Likewise, the Burlington Northern has made a significant investment in east-west dual trackage all the way across the Midwest to the deep ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach for the distribution of freight. So that is why we're seeing such a significant increase in the rail condition. How are the report card grades developed? Well, we looked at capacity, condition, funding, future need, operation and maintenance, public safety, resilience, and innovation. and the grades are very much like what you're familiar with from when you were in school or when your kids are in school. They're exceptional fit for the future, all the way down to F, failing and critical, unfit for the purpose. I want to go through and just briefly touch on all 16 elements of infrastructure and capture just something that is available to you on the electronic version of the report card that says something about that discipline of infrastructure. For example, roads. 42% of our America's highways remain congested. We did see a slight increase in the grade for roads from D- to D. So we are seeing some improvement, but still you're spending about half your time in congested areas. Inland waterways, a grade of D-. Right here in Kansas City, Missouri, I look back in history and the Missouri River was a very important part of our trade and our commerce. Yet the ability to utilize that river for freight distribution is almost minimal at this point. 52 service interruptions a day are occurring on our inland waterways. Ports. Inland ports, 95% of overseas trade moves through our ports. I was in Minneapolis last week. The Minnesota chapter of the American Public Works Association is doing a Minnesota 2050 program, and I was filming an introductory video for that. And somebody said, well, why are we concerned about ports? And I said, have you been to Duluth lately? Have you looked at Lake Superior? It is the most significant inland port in the United States. And how much freight is coming in and passing through the port of Duluth and moving back through the St. Lawrence Seaway. Aviation got a grade of D. $22 billion is the cost of congestion at airports. And I saw a map recently that showed all of the flights in the United States in a day that were either delayed on departing or arriving. And it's unbelievable. The map was almost solid red with areas of congestion. But the other aspect of aviation, which is often overlooked, is the freight movement that goes through aviation. A lot of our airports have a significant amount of cargo that are going through them. Do you know that the Kansas City, Missouri International Airport Terminal, which many of you probably flew into, is the largest distribution hub of fresh flowers in the United States? Right here in the central part of the United States, fresh flowers come in and they're distributed out from the Kansas City hub, which is pretty amazing to me. I thought that was pretty significant. Bridges, a slight improvement. We've still got significant problems with our bridges, but there has been a concerted effort to make some investment in our bridges, and it was appropriate that we see a slight increase in the grade. But yet, 11% of our bridges remain structurally deficient as we speak today. Rail, as I said, made the largest jump, going from a C- to a C+, because the rail industry has invested $75 billion in the last 4 years in their own infrastructure. Transit, as I get older, and I said that I work part-time because I'm gradually moving out of my career and into another phase of my life, and I'm looking at many baby boomers who are like that, and we're going to become more and more dependent on transit to get to the doctor's office, to get to our churches, to get to our shopping activities, and 45% of Americans do not have access to transit. I have a slide in another presentation that shows a young couple sitting at a light rail station. He's got on a tuxedo, she's got on her wedding gown. They're getting ready to leave on their honeymoon. Now, I doubt that there are too many people that are leaving on their honeymoon via light rail, but the younger generation are being attracted to communities where light rail and streetcars are available. That's one of the reasons that Kansas City is making a significant investment in a streetcar system, which if you travel downtown, you will see the beginnings of that work. Energy is a very significant concern. I think about today how dependent we are on energy for our laptops and, just pushing buttons on the microwave and these ranges that everything is a glass top range. How much energy we consume as compared to 20 or 30 years ago. In the 1980s, the United States had the most fantastic electrical distribution system in the world. We still have that same system today. We have not made significant improvements in it in the last 35 years. We are facing a point in time that we are either going to have to make a significant investment in our energy distribution system and our energy supply system, or the quality of life that we know as Americans is going to be impacted. Dams, some places have a lot of dams. Here in Missouri, we had the failure of the Tom Sauk Dam a few years ago. Fortunately, there were no lives lost. But had that been in a more populated area, we would be facing significant problems. I look at the dams that were built for flood control, and the reality is that many of them were built with a 50-year life. And the reality is that the average age of our dams across the United States is 54 years. Wastewater continues to be a significant issue. Kansas City, Missouri is facing a $3 billion bill basically because we built combined sewers back in the 1920s or earlier and put sanitary sewers and stormwater flow in the same sewer line. And now we have to separate those. We have a decree with the EPA and a consent decree, and we have 25 years to either separate that or provide some other means of dealing with our wastewater. Many of the cities along our rivers have combined sewers. You can track right down the Missouri River. There's Omaha, there's St. Joe, there's Kansas City, there's St. Louis, and then you can look at like the Ohio River out in Tennessee. They're dealing with a lot of Chattanooga's just recently had a consent decree. Memphis and Nashville are all facing that, as are Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and many of the other cities across the United States. Wastewater is a significant issue. The EPA is continuing to tighten the screws on our wastewater plants, and justifiably so. If you look at a view of what the Gulf of Mexico looked like when the 1994 flood occurred and all of that stuff was going into the Gulf of Mexico and the impact that we're having on our environment. The EPA can be difficult to work with, but they are somebody that we have to work with, and they, I think, are looking out for our best interests. We have got to find a way to take better care of our wastewater. I was in China a few years ago with a Public Works delegation, and we visited the Gaebdion wastewater treatment plant in Beijing, which is the wastewater treatment plant that treated all of the waste from the Olympics, and they were proud to say that they treated 92% of the waste that came out of the Olympic Village. I said, that's great. What about the other 8%? They thought it was good because they only treat 40% of their wastewater in the country of China, and that's a country of 1.3 billion people. That's going to impact all of us around the world at some point in time. Drinking water, if you're from Minnesota and the Land O'Lakes, you probably don't think there's a concern. If you're from western Kansas, Arizona, New Mexico, places like that, drinking water is a significant concern. We are adding a new person in the United States every 14 seconds. The birth rate, the death rate, and the immigration rate, we're adding one person every 14 seconds. Currently, we have 316 million people in the United States. The 2010 census said, well, we think there's going to be 420 million by the year 2050. They've now upped that to 436 million. We are going to grow by a third in the next 35 years. How are we going to provide enough drinking water for these people? If you're from Georgia and Tennessee, you already know about the border war that's going on regarding access rights to the Tennessee River for drinking water. If you're from Georgia or Florida or Alabama, you know about the battle over Lake Lanier and the drinking water that Atlanta is trying to assume. If you're from Texas or Oklahoma, you know about the battle over the Red River Basin and the drinking water that's going to be for Oklahomans or for Texans. If you're from Kansas, you know about the Olagala Aquifer and how it's being drawn down by the irrigation of crops in Nebraska to the point that western Kansas could become inhabitable if we don't provide water for them. Solid waste, every man, woman, and child in the United States creates 4.5 pounds of trash every day on the average. But we're doing a better job. We're now recycling a third of all of that solid waste. We're doing a fantastic job. We need to be patted on the back for it, but our landfills are filling up. It's a concern. Levees, I was in charge of the levees and flood wall system in Kansas City, Missouri in 1994 when we had a significant flood along the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers, and we were terribly concerned that within 1 mile of where you sit today, that entire area was going to be inundated. Our levees and our flood walls held. The problem is they were built after the 1951 flood, and there's been significant more development. There have been more levees and flood walls built upstream, and as a result, there's more water coming down, and it's coming quicker. We are currently seeing progress in the passage of WRDA, which is the Water Resource Development and Recovery Act, and there's good testimony going on in D.C., and we're hopeful that that is going to get passed, but this is a concern. We've got to deal with our levees and flood walls if we're going to continue to have the quality of life that we know. Hazardous waste, 1 in 4 of us live within 3 miles of a hazardous waste site. Schools, not normally thought of as our traditional infrastructure, but we're not taking care of our school properties, our school buildings, the way we should. School construction has tapered by 50% in recent years. Public parks and recreation, some people say that's frou-frou. We don't need to worry about that. Let me tell you, as our country becomes more urbanized, where do the kids play? We've got to take care of our parks. I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago for the American Public Works Association Congress. We were in downtown Chicago. I was delighted at what I saw. Millennium Park is built over the Millennium train station, and the Crown Fountain right here, there were kids playing in the fountain. Chicago's doing a fantastic job downtown. I salute them and appreciate what they're doing. We need to all be looking at those opportunities in our communities. Our report card is not just focused on the national report card. This year we have recruited our sections and our branches to develop statewide report cards. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes how you can access that information. Again, there's the website. And in fact, Hart, could we go to that website? This is something that you can simply download. The first thing you'll see is the report card comes up. We're live right now. We're on the internet right now. Hart, would you launch the report card for us? You open up and there are various categories here. Did I advance that? Okay. I'm advancing that. I'm sorry. Okay. Up in the upper right-hand corner, I better not point to it with a laser, there is a bookmark. So once you've been on the report card, you can bookmark pages that you want to utilize in the future. So let's go to the first one, Hart, the grade sheet GPA. This is what we talked about. These are the 16 categories. These are the current ratings. Next bookmark. These are comparisons to what we've had in the past. As we scroll down just a little bit, Hart, you will see at the bottom what the cumulative grade is. We've gone from a D to a D+. We've made improvement. But I would suggest to you that when Mara reviews the significant progress of her sophomore in college, if he comes home with a D+ and said, look, Mom, I went from a D+ to a D, she's not going to be happy with it. And I suggest that you as legislators and we as engineers should not be happy with this either. Next bookmark, please. Let's put it into dollars. There is funding out there. Is it sufficient? No. Could we scroll down, Hart? The total need is $3.6 trillion right there. And we currently have $2 trillion identified, so we've got almost a 50% gap in meeting our infrastructure needs. Next bookmark. This is just information about our committee that puts it together. If we can scroll down a little ways, I get a little plug. There, I made it. I got it. Okay. Next bookmark, please. So what? So what if we've got a D+ grade on our infrastructure? So what if roads are D? In the past, ASCE has put out these report cards, and people said, so what? How does that impact me? So we've done something additional this time. We've done something called the Failure to Act studies. The Failure to Act studies dwell into what the impact is on the quality of life and the economy of our country and individual families if we don't do something about it. Surface transportation, water and wastewater, energy transmission, airports, inland waterways, and marine ports. Each of those is a hot link. You can access a report that tells you what the impacts are going to be. I'm going to capture a couple of those for you in a minute. Let's move to the next bookmark, Hart. Bridges. I know that you're transportation focused, so we're going to spend just a little bit of time on bridges. C+, we talk about over 200 million trips are taken daily across efficient bridges in the nation's 102 largest metropolitan areas. This tab right here allows you to slide over. Let's slide over, Hart. Conditions and capacities. The percentage of bridges that are either functionally obsolete or structurally deficient has been declining slowly over the last decade as states and cities have increased efforts. Still, 11% are structurally deficient. Let's tab over, Hart. Investment and funding. There's an area in there that talks about how what we're spending and what it's costing and what we need to be spending. Let's slide over. Some success stories. Oregon has made a significant investment in their bridge program. It's not on here, but it should be on here. Missouri has made a significant investment in their Safe and Sound program, basically taken 800 bridges across the state and is rebuilding those. Let's tab over. A conclusion, while the number has been declining, we need to set a goal. We need to set a goal by the next time the report card comes out that we've gone from 11% structurally deficient bridges to 8%. Let's tab over. A glossary of terms. VMT would be described in there. What is a deficient bridge? What is a functionally obsolete bridge? Let's scroll down a little bit. And where does this information come from? ASC make this information up? No. Our committee went over all of these different reports and information and gathered information from various sources to put this report together. Let's go to our next bookmark, Hark. I did that one, I'm sorry. Keep on going. Let's go to roads. Yeah. Roads overview, similarly. Roads have gone to a D, 42% remain congested. We waste $101 billion in time and fuel annually. Tab over. Conditions capacity, it talks about 3 trillion vehicle miles are traveled on our roads in 2000 alone. That's vehicle miles of travel. 32% of America's roads are in poor or mediocre condition. Let's tab over. What's it going to take to rebuild our system? That information is there. Tab over. Some success stories. Some states that are doing well with the dollars that they have. Let's tab over. Some conclusions, what we need to be doing. Performance-based investment strategies, looking at performance management. Continue the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Tab over, Hark. Glossary and also sources are there. Let's go back to the bookmarks and drop down to overview. I want to all right, hit the navigation menu and go to charts and figures and scroll over. There should be one that shows structurally deficient bridges by county. Right? No, that's not it. One back. Right there. Okay, there's a map of the United States and every county is highlighted. Let's go, Hark. You're in Henry County, Missouri. Come up just a little bit. See if you can hit Jackson County, Missouri, where we are right now. Well.
Yeah, let's go to Nebraska instead.
Okay, let's go to Nebraska. All right. Leavenworth County, Kansas. Fort Leavenworth is there. That's where the Command and Staff General College is and where Leavenworth Prison is. They've got 251 deficient bridges, 251 bridges in their county, 26 are deficient, and 35 are functionally obsolete. Regardless of where you're from, that information is available to you. Okay, we're going to move on off of the actual report card. I think you need to, okay. We've got increasing demands and it requires action. Whether it's a failure of our infrastructure, whether it's responding to superstorms like Katrina or Sandy, we've got issues. I mentioned earlier what Minnesota is doing with their 2050 plan. There is an America 2050 plan. I bet many of you are familiar with it. If you're not, I would encourage you to review it. It talks about what trends are going to be for development in the United States by 2050 and what we need to be doing to prepare for it. What can we do about it? Well, it's going to take bold leadership and it's going to take a compelling vision. It's going to take meeting and communicating with you, the state legislators, and with our United States legislators. It's going to take that we, as engineers, build in more sustainability and resilience. What sustainability mean? It means how do we have in the future what we have now? How do we produce something for our grandchildren that we enjoy now? And resilience, we've got to make our structures out of better materials. We've got to do a better job of designing. I read somewhere recently that homes in the United States are expected to last 70 years. In the UK, they're expected to last 125 years. Why can't our homes in the United States last as long as they do in the UK? The same reason, the same logic should apply to our infrastructure. We've got to build it to last longer. Great progress is being made in research through organizations like the Strategic Highway Research Program, better materials, better methods, and we need to be utilizing those, and you need to be holding your engineers accountable to do that. Prioritize, plan, and fund for the future. The Iroquois Indian said that we should plan 7 generations in advance, basically 140 years out. Are you thinking what your state is going to look like in 140 years? If you're not, who is? The responsibility is on us. With the investment that we're advocating, the $3.6 trillion, if we don't do that, we're going to face a $3.1 trillion annual loss in gross domestic product. Each family is going to see a $3,100 loss in their personal disposable income, and 3.5 million jobs are at risk across the country. That's a third of our unemployed people in the country right now. That number is going to be added to that. Infrastructure impacts 3.5 million jobs. The transportation industry, the electrical transmission industry, the water and wastewater industry, the aviation industry, and waterways and ports. There's where the jobs are. That's where they're going to go if we don't take care of our infrastructure. Here's the cumulative impact by sector. It breaks it down: business sales, gross domestic product, jobs, disposable income, value of exports. All of this information is accessible to you in the report card. I want to close with a quote. When I was APWA National President and we were on the Capitol Hill, we met with U.S. Senator Bernard Sanders. Obviously, 2008, it's a few years ago, but I think what he said was appropriate then. We are in the midst of an enormous struggle with incredible consequences. As public works official, you are in the middle of the struggle to rebuild our deteriorating infrastructure. America cannot have a bright future unless we work together to ensure infrastructure meets the needs Americans demand. The burden is on you, and the burden is on my profession. How can we help you? 3 things. We can make resources available to you. When you're considering legislation, consider talking to ASCE, and we can provide someone with engineering expertise to come and provide testimony for you, to provide information to you to help you with your legislation. We can provide you with the reports that I've described today, and we can provide you with some model legislation that you can consider. Again, Aaron Costello is here. Aaron is from our state legislative advocacy group. We have for you, each of you, a copy of the executive summary of the infrastructure report card, and we'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have.